All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April 2024 Argo CD and Rollouts Community Meeting. I'm your host, Jesse, maintainer of the Argo project. And if you haven't already, please add yourself to the attendee list. And if you have any agenda items, issues, or topics you'd like to discuss during this meeting, you're welcome to comment on the Google Doc, and we can get to them after our agenda items. And just a reminder that the Argo project does adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct, so please be courteous and respectful to each other. And a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. Okay, so today we have two topics. First, Christian has he recently posted a blog about how application dependencies and various techniques you can use to handle that in Argo CD. And then Regina, Regina will has a demo of the app set UI that she's been working on. All right, with that, I'll hand it over to Christian.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. I will share my screen. For just to be completely transparent, kind of did this last minute, so I'm sorry I don't have like a more formal presentation or anything like that. But I did recently uh publish a blog about application dependencies. One of the biggest questions I think we get as a community is like how to handle application dependencies, since there's currently no native way of doing it right within the application spec itself. I did post the link to the blog on the Google Doc, so for all of those who are there, it's there if you want to kind of take a look at that. So I'm not gonna be like reading from the blog, right? That'd be kind of boring. But I do want to go over kind of just like some of the high level things that you need to take into consideration and different options that you have if you're thinking about doing like application dependencies. So in over the blog, I kind of talk about like how we have sync waves, right? And that works on individual um uh, objects that the application is deploying. So for example, I go through the example of, okay, let's deploy a simple example of deploy the namespace first, then a pod, and then something else, and yada yada yada, right? Like, and it has it in a way of doing a sync wave that it's number based, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can go negative numbers and everything like that. For those that don't know, if you don't have this annotation, it's assumed that you're in sync wave 0. So even if you don't put a sync wave, you're technically using sync waves, even if you're not doing the annotation. So um, and that's important because one of the things that you can do by doing application dependencies is using sync waves within an apps pattern, that a lot of people use for bootstrapping. You can also leverage other things like sync waves inside of that app pattern, except there's some prerequisites that you need to like kind of keep in mind, right? For app of apps, right? First and foremost is just kind of just um generic best practices in Kubernetes just in general, right? And one of those is you set up readiness and liveness probes. I've worked with some people in the community where they're like, "Hey, sync waves, they're not working. The deployment comes before this deployment." It's like, well, did you set up readiness and liveness probes? That's very, very important, especially if your application comes up but isn't ready to receive traffic until some other things happen, right? Maybe you have an init container or something else, some sort of post deployment thing that needs to happen. And so this is something that Argo CD uses to determine overall application health. So if you're doing things like deployments, stateful sets, whatever that has readiness and liveness probes, you'll need to do things. You need basically to set that up just in general best practices, right? I just kind of taking Argo CD out of the picture is that readiness and liveness probes. And I did in the blog, I did put an example of MySQL, right? Because I think that is Um, um, I think initially in Kubernetes, when people were deploying, they were just deploying MySQL, and the front end or the back end, API was failing because it wasn't able to connect to the database because the database wasn't even up and running yet, right? And so I use kind of that example, but in general, um, you need to keep in mind that before you do any application dependencies, make sure that you are setting up proper health checks and probes in the objects that you are deploying. Um, on top of that, I go through some of the uh, kind of Argo CD best practices type of thing, right? Even before, again, before doing application dependencies, is kind of a good practice to have Argo CD health checks, right? So even though um, there are built-in health checks for Argo CD, and those are constantly growing, there may be a need to write your own or expand the one that's already there. And this is especially true in the case when you are using when you're writing operators, right? You write an operator or an operator, or there's some new CRD out there that hasn't made it into Argo CD yet. You can write your own health checks, right? Here's an example of doing it for I just kind of just took it from the doc, but it is a cert manager, right? Like kind of like and this is written in Lua. And so you kind of write your own resource customizations for health checks for certain um, objects. You write CRDs that either one don't exist, something you wrote, or at the end you want to extend something that maybe you need maybe a little more information. Um, and so yeah, so probes, set up the proper probes, Argo CD Health, very, very important. And also application health. So those who are familiar with App of Apps and are trying to do syncways with App of Apps, one thing that is missed is that there is no health check for an Argo CD application itself. You actually have to put that in. It was originally there but removed on Argo CD 1.8. I, in the blog when you read it, there's an issue there, 3781, to read more about the history of why it was taken out. But high level, you need to put that back in order for application dependencies to work out. Just in general, whether you're using App of Apps or later on, I'll talk about progressive syncs. Um, and that's kind of the overall kind of prerequisites, right? Like you think about probes, you think about CRD health in general, resource health in general, and Argo CD itself needs to know about application health and what it's considered an application being healthy or not. So because there's a cascading effect that happens there. Probes on the objects tell Argo CD that the application is healthy. The application um, health monitor when tells Argo CD when an application is actually fully deployed and sync and healthy. So you need to kind of follow that chain and the cascading effect there as well. So as far I mentioned App of Apps, that's one, and that's kind of like where um, um, one of the solutions is for application dependencies, but there's also a way to do it without kind of doing all of this and just rely strictly on eventual consistency. And there's there's some misconceptions that Argo CD can't do eventual consistency, and that's because by default it's set up with all these checks and um, dry runs and things like that, which you can toggle those, right? And you can do something like eventual consistency by setting some sync options, right? I usually do validate is false, meaning just kind of just apply this YAML as is. And also I run the annotation skip dry on missing resource, right? So this is kind of like you're trying to apply a CR before the CRD is applied. And so kind of like with those two options, it's basically you're just doing from a high level kubectl, a kubectl apply dash F, and you just keep, and it tries to keep running that until it deploys something and until it's healthy. And there, the drawbacks for this is that there's no validation of YAML, so it will never be healthy because maybe you gave it a bad, garbage in, garbage out, right? You give it a bad resource, there's no dry run, there's none of that. It doesn't validate any of the YAML. And it'll always fail just be, and you will never, eventual consistency won't be eventual because just because of something you did. Yeah, I know I ran into that as well in the past. So um, that's kind of one of the drawbacks as well. And just in general, some things just can't happen before others. So I know in the case of and there's probably other use cases, but in the case of like something like is Istio, right, service mesh, where a sidecar gets injected, you can't deploy the application before the sidecar gets injected because you need to go back and delete those pods in order for the new sidecar to appear. So you actually do have to have some sort of ordering, and that's kind of like where the apps of apps pattern comes into play. I go through a uh, a scenario here, right? Like kind of like database back end, front end. You want to deploy those in that order, and so doing the Argo CD application, I actually annotate the Argo CD application doing app of apps because I have an application that's deploying other applications, and I want that parent application to deploy them in these orders, right? So I annotate the database with 1, the backend application with 2, and the front end application with 3. Very simple use case, but it kind of shows you how that works. And I do have a repo. Actually, I'll put this repo with some of these examples. It's in the blog, but I'll also post it in the doc after I'm done here. And there's just kind of from a high level, there's nothing special about this Argo CD application, the parent app. All it's doing is just deploying other apps. And since I'm annotating it with sync waves, it'll deploy them as such, with the caveat that you already put your probes in place, right? So your readiness and liveness probes. You set up any health check or extended or any custom resource checks. And 3, you've already put in the patch for Argo City application health, right? So all those three things together, will help doing this app of apps with sync waves, right? You actually need to have those 3 things in place. Best practices, those 3 things in place in order to actually do application dependencies between one after another. And there's a simple GIF here. GIF, sorry. I don't know if anyone has a preference, but I do have a GIF here that kind of shows you how that looks like. But you can try it yourself from the repo as well. That kind of goes through, okay, there's a parent app that deploys 3 other apps using, sync waves. There's also progressive syncs. So in a little bit of history where application sets came into play, application sets were really a way to a templating engine to deploy many applications, right? So instead of, writing 500 applications, you write one application set that then deploys those applications. It was never meant to do ordering. It was never meant to, do any of that. It was just kind of like a simple way to templatize deploying of applications. Then later on, give a shout out to Indeed, who actually wrote this. Progressive syncs came out. So progressive syncs, it's I have to call it out. It is an alpha feature. It's still an alpha feature, and there's still some kind of lingering issues that needs to be worked on before it actually goes out of alpha state. But progressive syncs, it basically kind of takes the basically is a way to order how your applications are not only created but also deployed. And so there's a few caveats there. One, again, I said it's an alpha feature, so just kind of just keep that in mind. One, the applications that the application set generates will have auto sync disabled. So even if you have it enabled in your application set spec, template spec, the applications themselves will have that disabled. And that's because there's like an overarching progressive sync logic that handles the syncing of those apps, right? So that's one. And if an application's been pending for more than 300 seconds by default, the application set will just say, all right, that's healthy. It'll just mark it healthy. And that's kind of the behavior right now. More information on the official doc. I kind of just wanted to call out, kind of the kind of like the big gotchas. And so the idea is all done by labeling. So I have a simple the example I go through in the blog, and I also have it on that repo, is that it's I use the list generator, just kind of dumb key value pairs. I also do uh, uh the progressive sync uses labels essentially and match expressions on these labels. So you have these key values um, are viewing this here. So like go list component database, right? So go list component this will expand to go list component database here, and it's the first one. Yes, so that's where the SRV, so the services database, that's where that gets filled in here. And I'm saying the first step is that anything involving a database that has that value database will be deployed first. And it'll go through, again, the prerequisites are always the prerequisites, right? Readiness live list probes, resources, customization for health checks, Argo CD application health checks, all those are still true. You still need to do those. But this is a way to do it with application sets. And it does basically deploys this, waits till this application is healthy and synced, and then it'll deploy the second one, which is the back end, and then on and on and on and on. There's other options. I actually recommend reading the documentation progressive syncs. There's other really cool options like burst rate and things like that. Like basically, don't deploy everything at once, right? This maybe you have like 800 databases. I don't know. Deploy 10% at a time, then move on to 40% of the time, things like that. There's other options. This is just kind of a simple example, specific with application dependencies. And it, I'm going to wait until this replays. Really, it's the same behavior. The only difference is that the application is created first, and then the application set progressive sync. See, like there, it created them all at once, but they were all out of sync. And the application set controller with the progressive sync logic goes one by one and tells it to sync like that. And so, and I kind of go over that as well, kind of like high level. And to kind of close this out, there is an issue, and issue 7437 that is actually the proposal for. Actually, let me click on it to make sure I'm not lying. Yeah, so it's a proposal for actually having a depends on feature built into the application spec. So even though you can do application dependencies now with all these options, there is a discussion happening around actually implementing a depends on feature, right? So make it a little bit more easier in the future. I also want to call out that I believe Jan from Red Hat did a lot of work on it as well. I think there is a work in progress PR somewhere, I think I saw as well. So there is talks, and that depends on feature is being thought of and is being ironed out. And we're not just relying on these tool sets, but you can still get the behavior now by using a combination of these things. So that's it from a high level. Again, I'll post the repo. I already posted the blog, but I also post the repo as well on the doc. So I don't know if I think there might be questions.
Yeah, I think Dan posted a question while you were talking about the progressive syncs. The question is, does it do this, I guess, the syncs as a blocking operation?
Blocking in terms of like it,
like
it
if
doesn't.
it's going through and doing sync app 1, sync app 2, sync app 3. If one takes 10 minutes to progress and become healthy, is it already moved on, or is it waiting for that to happen?
Yeah, it'll wait, and it'll wait up to 300 seconds as the default, and that's adjustable, but it will wait. It's just it won't wait
So is
forever.
is it waiting for a time period or is it waiting for a status?
Both. It's waiting for a status up until the time the upper time limit is hit for progressive syncs.
Okay. And I missed part of your presentation. Does this require updating the way that application health status work with the Lua scripting
Yeah, you still have to add
to
that.
work? Okay.
Yeah. You still have to add all that.
Question: what would it take for Jan's PR to be merged, or what's stopping it from being merged?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I talked to Michael Crenshaw a little bit about it. I haven't talked to Jan. I mean, Jan and Michael are on. I don't know if they have comments on it. I don't know, I guess, is the answer to your question.
Well, I'm only waiting for it to be merged. I think there was quite a couple of review cycles, which all have been addressed. So unless there is more requests for change, I think someone would just have to approve and merge. So from my point of view, it's feature complete for the beta cycle, at least.
Also, it's probably important to call out that like all of the techniques that Christian went over have a kind of time and place. Like there's some are more suitable for others. For like the depends on feature, that's great for the webhook one example, because once the webhook is running, as long as you know that exists one time, like it got created, then future syncs maybe not as important because you can trust that it exists. Others times you want that ordering to happen every time you deploy a sequence of applications. There's a specific order, and likewise, like readiness probes, or sorry, init containers have their place too, because maybe you want to stop a rolling update from happening because of a change in the way you're doing your manifest. So it's great. I think it's great that we have all these in our toolbox. It's just kind of deciphering when certain techniques are appropriate over others. Okay, any other questions for Christian? And then otherwise we'll have a nice preview of application set UI. Okay. So Regina, are you prepared to share what you've been working on?
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So I'm gonna show a short demo of the support in UI for upset, which is currently a work in progress. We're 3 people working on this. Me, Keith Chung, who is helping me, great help with the React and UI side, and Alexi Mantha, that is working on the required backend changes, things that are currently missing at the backend side to have like a full functionality. I will share my screen now. Okay, so the most basic idea behind the application sets in the UI is that they, in a way, resemble an app of apps, because application set manages applications. And so it's basically like really similar to an app of apps that is also managing applications. And this is like the basic idea behind the whole thing, that it can be treated in a way as an app of apps. Currently, the application sets are located under settings. And this is what was achieved so far. So you can see that all the views that are available for applications are also available for application sets. In my example, I have a single application set. And so this is the tiles view, which displays it. I can show how it, like compare how it looks like for applications. So these are tiles for applications. And this is tile for application set with its relevant fields. This is the list view. Currently, there is only one member in that list. There are still things needed to be ironed up, like here from user experience, to make it look a bit prettier. And the pie chart that basically displays this application set. Also, as the filters on the side, those are the ones that are relevant for application set, which is its health status and its labels. And if I go back, then we can see that the filters are working based on the health status of this. And, yeah. When we enter the more detailed view of the application set, then we see that it currently has a single application. And as for the details of the application set, at this point, I have implemented the manifest functionality. And along with the events functionality. Currently, this one doesn't have any events, but if there were, they would be displayed here. And other things like editing, like if I click here, right, the summary part is not something that is available yet. This can be considered something for a later stage, as it is a bit more complex. And so for like the first stage, there are only some things that are available. It's basically a read-only. There is not an option to create an application set from the UI or to update it. And there is also the other view that is relevant for application set, which is the list view. Also, it needs a bit. It's a little love from the user experience, from icon here, and maybe some other small things, but basically this is the list view for application set. If we look on application side, then those are applications. So this is very similar for application set. I think that this is it for this point in time. I can describe a bit where this feature stands in terms of its development status.
Oh, sure. You want to share?
Unless there are questions before that.
I just see a lot of positive comments in the chat. Like, yeah, I mean, what you have is awesome already, and which is nothing. So, I'm sure this is much appreciated.
I actually had a question. I had a question about the design decision to move application sets to settings instead of making it like a first-class citizen in the left-hand navigation bar just below applications, maybe. So is that just, yeah, like, do you plan to move it to a first-class citizen of that navigation bar? Or?
Well, actually, when I started, it was a first class. It was right under the applications on the left sidebar. But then Alexander M. has made a remark that perhaps at least at the first stage, the application sets should be available like only to the admins and maybe not to all Argo CD users, only Argo CD admins. And so he asked me to move it under settings. But anyway, if if it is decided otherwise, because this question keeps coming up, it's pretty easy just having it back as a first class under the applications side and outside of settings. I mean, it's not a big change.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thanks.
Now, some challenges around the design of this feature are basically that, as you saw, there are many things that are similar to applications and to application sets. And so on the front-end side, there is a need to extract the common functionality of apps and of application sets, and then have each of them extended with only its relevant functionality. So currently, this is something that I'm working on with Keith to improve the design. The design of this was very gradual. I started with just duplicating everything just to understand the architecture of the components and basically to get a feeling of what Argo CD UI is comprised of. So I started like this, and then together with Keith, we started working on refactoring that to extract the common functionality and to reduce the duplication. And it has come a couple of serious steps since then, so it is already better. And there is still room for improvement to make it a cleaner design. So this is one thing that is currently going on. And in some of the backend functionality, there is also a similar challenge. Because at the backend side, there is like stream or watch functionality that is needed for both apps and application sets, and I don't know, the resource tree and stuff like that. So also probably as I received a comment on one of the backend pull requests, probably there is some work that needs to be done also there to extract the common functionality and to reduce duplication. That is the second thing. And the third thing is that currently 2 of the backend pull requests are merged into my pull request. So this is like one big pull request. And the resource tree backend changes pull request is currently treated as a standalone one. I understood that it is also a prerequisite for another feature. So as far as I know, this one would be merged independently at some point, while the other 2, which are the events functionality for application set and the watch functionality for application set, are going to be parts of the initial big PR.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I think originally when I remember early discussions on like what an app set UI might be, we were thinking like, well, apps for your applications view for app set, like one easy way that we thought could be handled was just like filtering on the existing app card view just based on app set. I mean, what you've done is actually a lot more and intricate, and you faced all the problems with like reusing a lot of the application code. But I wanted to throw that out there as like additional things like that could be added in the app set view is like, okay, we could also just take them to a filtered view of the applications labeled with the app set. And then they get all the benefits of just the existing, the card view, list view of the app tables too. So it's something that we can do in addition to all the work that you've done, just to add some more conveniences around this feature.
To understand you better, I'm sharing again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean that like somewhere it would be filtered here?
Yeah, so if you go to the applications tab, yeah, and then so we have filtering here by label, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we label all the apps that are created by an application set already. So the small feature or improvement is that we can link them to just a existing view that we have built already, but it's just already pre-filtered on the apps associated with the app set. And then from there, you benefit from the things like the multiple sync things, the pie chart, the list view, all of those things like you get for free, just because you deep linked into a pre-filtered view from the app set. So that it was just another way to accomplish what you were doing, without like having to build out like a lot of new functionality. But so yours is better,
Okay.
but I mean, but
Okay, I think I understood. So it's like linking reversely, right? Like first getting to the applications that an application set is managing, something like that, and then from them to get to the application set, something like that.
Yeah. It's kind of like a poor man's version of what you did. You created dedicated views, which is like a better user experience. The poor man's idea was that we have existing stuff. It's just provide some small conveniences for users to get to like that filtered view on the existing applications tab.
I don't think the two approaches are contradicting. I mean,
No,
they
it's
can
not.
be
That's why I
complementing.
suggested. Yeah.
Yeah, they can be complementing. Also, the other one they implemented it. Yeah.
There's a question from Luke.
Yeah, on the comments earlier about like the admin view and settings, I might be confusing this, but like app sets don't belong to any projects. So if you have like you set up all your users and they're restricted into a project, they'll never see an app set.
Yeah, we were exactly discussing in with Michael yesterday. So basically, it looks like if there are no if there is no RBAC on the backend side to allow this, then the application set list would be returned empty because it's like on the backend side, right? So one option would probably be from the user experience side of things. One option would be explicitly checking on the front end whether the user is authorized to see those application sets, and if not, maybe I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense to display it like at all. This is one thought I have about this.
Are you thinking like a relationship to projects and app sets?
No, I didn't think of a project. I mean, today application set, it doesn't live in the scope of a project, right?
Right.
Yeah, so basically, probably a regular RBAC is getting care of that.
Right, exactly. Right? So I mean, there are we have RBAC rules for app sets today. So even if we added the app set as a tab on the promote as a first class tab on the left, It doesn't. It's not as if they automatically can see app sets. It's really depending on like if their permission will allow them to see that. So I don't think it's that needs to guide like the user experience because the RBAC is in place to prevent the
Would the user, if they have app set permission, would they then see either all app sets, not just their app sets? There's not really an assignment of an app set to a project or user, right?
It's so yeah, since there's no projects, it's using, you can use star, you can use individual resources. So you could use, I guess the answer is you can have if you have a naming pattern, you can rely on a naming convention for them to see a filtered view. Otherwise, it's either all or single individual objects.
Gotcha.
API currently has a limitation that the API simply refuses to hand out application sets where the spec.project field is templated because the API server isn't capable of going through and doing all the templating to produce all of the possible project names to then check RBAC against. So that's just a limitation of the UI that is going to exist until we decide, do we just want a top level application set project field? I think that's fine for now. I think for the most part, people are hard coding the project name.
Okay, any other questions for Regina? Okay, let me check if there's any other agenda items. Nope, I didn't see any other topics. So unless there's anything else, thanks to, yeah, thank you, Regina. Thank you, Christian, for the topics today. It was people will find it really interesting and useful. And all right, thanks everyone, and we'll see you in another month.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.